Right. So today, we're going deep, really deep
Okay.
into some, let's just say, fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
You know, you gave us this document, Playbook for Early Response to High Consequence Emerging Infectious Disease Threats and Biological Incidents.
Mm.
And this is not exactly, light reading.
Right.
We're talking about a guide straight from the Office of the President
Oh, wow.
on how to handle, well, potential pandemics.
And marked
Yeah.
not for public distribution.
Right. Makes you wonder.
Always makes you wonder.
What's really in here.
You'll peek behind the curtain.
So you're diving into pandemic preparedness, huh? Interesting.
Right.
I mean, are you maybe brushing up before a big meeting or something like that? Or are you doing some research for a project?
Yeah.
Whatever it is,
Yeah.
you've come to the right place because we're
yeah.
going to unpack this playbook
Let's do it.
and really pull out, the good stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in here.
There is.
We've got risk assessment dashboards, a whole section on pathogens with pandemic potential.
Oh, yeah.
Some you'll have heard of, some you probably haven't, and then actual, step-by-step playbooks for both international and domestic outbreaks.
Oh, yeah, this thing is
It's comprehensive.
very thorough.
So let's start with the basics here.
Yeah.
What's the playbook's core mission? Why does it even exist?
Well, the goal here, I think, is pretty clear. To equip U.S. government leaders with a very concrete, actionable plan for coordinating a response to any potential pandemic threats and, any sort of bio-incidents, basically.
Yeah.
Not just identifying the risk, but knowing exactly what to do when those risks become a reality.
Right. But tackling a potential pandemic, that can't be a one-person job, right? So who are all the players involved here?
So the playbook, it lays out like a whole network, right, with the National Security Council, the NSC for short, and its committees really at the center of things.
At the top.
But it's not just
Public health officials that we're talking about here. You've got the Department of Health and Human Services, the DOD, the State Department.
Ah.
I mean, this really is a national security effort.
Okay, so we've got the mission.
Yeah.
We've got the players.
Uh-huh.
Now, I got to ask you about these risk assessment dashboards.
Okay.
I mean, that sounds like something out of,
Right.
a sci-fi thriller or something.
A little bit. So they are pretty high tech, I gotta say.
Really?
The playbook really highlights the WHO's role.
So that's the World Health Organization.
World Health Organization,
Yeah,
yep. In
right.
evaluating, the risk of these infectious disease threats.
Mm.
And they use these dashboards to analyze 3 what they call critical dimensions.
Okay, break it down.
Yeah.
What are those dimensions?
Okay, so first you've got what they call epidemiological factors.
Right.
This is all about understanding the disease itself,
Okay.
How contagious is this thing? How deadly is it?
Right. So the nuts and bolts.
The disease itself.
Then they look at security and political indicators.
Okay.
I think unstable regions, conflict zones,
Right.
places where a disease could just explode,
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then finally, they look at the potential
Okay.
for this disease to reach the U.S.
Right.
and actually cause an outbreak here.
So let's say the WHO, they're looking at their fancy dashboards.
They see something.
Yeah, and they spot a potential threat.
Yeah.
What happens next? How does the U.S. government actually respond on an international level?
That's where the international response tiers come into play.
Okay.
The playbook outlines 4 levels of action,
Okay.
each one escalating.
So they get more intense.
More intense, yeah,
Okay.
based on the severity of the...
I'm picturing like a ladder,
Okay, yeah.
Each rung is like a more intense response.
I like that. That's a good visual.
Okay.
So the first rung on the ladder is what they call normal operations.
It's basically business as usual, but with a, watchful eye on the situation.
Okay, so we're not panicking yet,
No, not yet.
but we're watching.
Watching closely.
Okay.
Then we step up to what they call an elevated threat.
Okay.
And this might involve gathering more intel, maybe assessing medical resources.
Right.
Starting to develop some potential response plans.
Right, so getting ready to act,
Yeah.
but not quite pulling the trigger yet.
Not yet. Not
Okay.
yet.
Okay.
Then the next rung up is what they call a credible threat.
Uh-oh.
Now things are
Now it's getting real.
getting serious.
Yeah.
The U.S. might start pre-positioning medical personnel and supplies.
Wow.
maybe providing some assistance to the countries that are affected,
Okay.
even potentially issuing travel
It's
advisories.
starting to really ramp up.
Things are happening.
Yeah.
And then, of course, at the top run, you've got a public health emergency of international concern.
Okay, so this is it.
That's the big one.
This is the all hands on deck situation.
All hands on deck. I mean,
Yeah.
what does that even mean?
Yeah, so that's a full-blown global emergency.
Right.
So the WHO declares a PHEIC when an outbreak poses, a serious risk to multiple countries
Okay.
and requires like a coordinated international response.
Right. So this is a big deal.
This is a big deal.
It's not just one country's problem.
Exactly. Think back to, the Ebola outbreak in West Africa.
Oh, yeah.
That
Oh,
was
it's scary.
that was declared a PHEIC.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's how the playbook tackles things
Yeah.
on a global scale.
Mm-hmm.
But what about threats closer to home?
Right.
What happens if there's an outbreak
Oh, yeah.
right here in the U.S.?
Don't
And
worry.
the playbook's got us covered there, too.
Okay.
It outlines a very specific plan for domestic outbreaks
Okay.
with 3 distinct phases of response.
All right. Let's hear it.
So it kicks off with what they call the primarily pre-incident phase. This is all about being prepared,
Right.
shoring up surveillance systems,
Yeah.
really fine-tuning those response plans,
Okay.
making sure we've got adequate resources on hand, just in case.
So it's like getting all your emergency supplies together
Yeah.
before a hurricane hits?
Exactly. That's a great analogy.
Okay.
And then if an incident occurs, we move into what they call the notification phase.
Right.
This is when those meticulously crafted plans
Yeah,
get activated.
Right.
The government, they gather all the intel they can about the outbreak. They start coordinating actions across all the different agencies.
So things are starting to heat up now.
Things are getting real.
Yeah, so what's the final phase of this
Okay.
domestic response plan?
The final phase is what they call intermediate operations.
Okay.
And this is where the focus really shifts to actively managing the outbreak,
Okay.
containing the spread, providing that medical care,
Right.
and starting to think about, the recovery phase.
So it's about taking action
Yes.
and adapting as you go.
Absolutely, because no 2 outbreaks are exactly alike.
Right.
And the playbook, it stresses that flexibility is key throughout this entire process.
Now, I'm noticing that both the international and domestic playbooks, they rely pretty heavily on these like detailed flowcharts
Oh, yeah.
to guide decision making.
They love their flowcharts.
It's like they've tried to anticipate
Right.
every possible
scenario.
Yes. So what are some of the like common themes or questions
Yeah.
that kind of run through these flowcharts?
So one of the biggest themes is, understanding the nature of the threat, right? Like, what pathogen are we dealing with? How easily does it spread? What are the symptoms? How deadly is this thing?
Right.
And, crucially, what are the chances of it reaching the U.S.?
So really getting as much intel
Yeah.
as you can as quickly as possible
As quickly as possible.
to get a handle on the situation.
You got it.
So once they've kind of got a grasp
Yeah. Yeah.
of the threat,
Uh-huh.
what's the next key question?
The next big one is like, what's the capacity of the affected region or
Right.
state, in the case of a domestic outbreak, to respond effectively?
Yeah.
Can their healthcare system handle a surge in patients? Do they have enough medical supplies, enough personnel?
Yeah.
Can they actually contain the spread of the disease?
I imagine that plays a big role
Huge role.
in deciding how much support
Yeah,
the U.S. government needs to provide.
exactly.
And then, of course, I imagine a major concern throughout the entire process
Oh, yeah.
is the potential impact
Yep.
on the U.S.
On the U.S. Both. Yeah.
Friends, in terms of...
In terms of public health and national security.
Got it.
Yeah.
A pandemic, it can have those ripple effects far beyond just the immediate
Right.
health crisis.
It's not just about,
Yeah.
like, the disease itself, right?
There's a lot more to it.
Economic fallout, economic disruption, social unrest, even political instability.
It's pretty sobering to think about all those potential consequences.
But that's why this playbook exists, to
Yeah.
help us navigate those difficult situations and make the best possible decisions to protect both public health and national security.
It's one thing to have a plan,
Yeah.
but it's another to actually communicate it
Huge.
effectively
Yeah.
in a pandemic situation.
Right?
Clear communication with the public.
Absolutely.
I mean, that could be
It's a matter of
matter of life and death.
life and death, yeah.
So how does this playbook address that
Right.
challenge.
Communication is a huge focus in this playbook.
Okay.
They really hammer home the importance of clear, consistent, and accurate messaging
Right.
delivered through a variety of channels, of course, to reach as many people as possible.
So no mixed messages.
No.
No bureaucratic jargon.
Yeah, no, got to keep it simple.
Right. People need to understand
That-
what's going on.
And they also stress the need to coordinate messaging across all the different government agencies.
Okay.
Make sure everyone's on the same page.
Right. Everyone's singing from the same
Exactly.
hymn sheet.
It's also crucial to tailor the messages to specific audiences, taking into account cultural and linguistic differences.
Right. It's about meeting people where they are
Absolutely.
and speaking to their needs and concerns.
You got it.
The playbook even acknowledges the potential for misinformation.
Oh,
Rumors.
especially in today's,
Especially now.
social media landscape.
Right.
It can spread like wildfire.
Because people are going to be hungry
Oh, yeah.
for information during a pandemic.
Right.
And if they can't get it from,
Credible source.
credible sources,
Yeah.
they'll go wherever they can to get it.
Exactly. That's why the playbook dedicates a whole section
Oh, wow.
of this communication plan.
For domestic response.
For domestic response, yes.
Okay, so let's dive into that
Okay.
communication plan.
Yeah.
What are the key points here?
It follows like a phased approach.
Okay.
Starting with pre-incident preparedness.
All right.
This is where they emphasize building relationships
Okay.
with key stakeholders, the media, community organizations,
Right.
developing those detailed communication plans, even pre-drafting messages
Wow.
that can be quickly adapted and disseminated
Right.
if an outbreak occurs.
So being proactive.
Proactive.
Getting ahead of the curve.
Absolutely.
Rather than playing catch up
Yep.
once a pandemic hits.
You got it.
Right.
Then, once an outbreak occurs,
Okay.
the focus shifts to quickly and accurately informing the public about the situation, providing clear guidance on what actions they should take to protect themselves and others, and, of course, addressing any rumors or misinformation.
Right, getting out in front of that.
Out in front of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's all about transparency.
Transparent.
Clarity,
Yeah.
and really building trust with the public.
You nailed it.
Because if people don't trust what
Yeah.
you're saying,
Yeah.
they're not going
They're not going to listen.
listen.
Exactly.
They're not going to follow. And the response can fall apart.
The guidelines.
Exactly.
Right.
And as the response continues, they stress the importance of providing those regular updates
Right.
on the situation,
Yeah.
highlighting any progress that's being made,
Mm-hmm.
and emphasizing, that continued vigilance and cooperation.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
It is. It's a marathon.
Right. Okay.
It's a long-term effort.
So it's about keeping the public informed,
Right.
engaged,
Empowered.
empowered
Throughout the entire process.
throughout the entire process. Yeah.
You got it.
Now, before we move on,
Yeah.
I want to touch on something
Okay.
that really struck me
Okay.
about this playbook.
Okay.
It's acknowledgement.
Of the potential impact
Right.
of a pandemic on mental health.
Oh, that's such a crucial point.
Yeah.
The playbook, it underscores the need to provide clear information about mental health resources,
Right.
addressing stigma, promoting resilience within communities.
Yeah.
Pandemics, they're not just a physical health crisis.
Right.
They take a huge toll on our mental and emotional well-being, too.
It's a reminder that we're not just dealing with
Yeah.
data points and statistics.
Right?
We're dealing with
Real people.
real people who are experiencing fear,
Anxiety.
uncertainty,
So huge.
all of that.
Yeah.
And the playbook recognizes
Yeah.
that communicating with empathy,
Right.
compassion, understanding,
Mhm.
that's essential.
Okay, so we've talked about the big picture.
Yeah.
The flowcharts, the importance of communication.
Right.
Now I want to get down to the nitty-gritty.
Okay, let's do it.
The playbook actually includes some sample exercises
do?
that walk through.
How these decisions might play out in a real-world scenario.
Yeah, they're really cool.
So it's like
They take all
those abstract frameworks and rubrics we've been discussing,
Right.
and they apply them to
Concrete.
situations,
Yeah.
showing how the decision-making process might unfold in response to, a specific type of outbreak.
So what kind of scenarios are we talking about?
Okay.
Give us some examples.
One example focuses on a cholera epidemic in Iraq.
Oh, wow.
They walk through the different phases of the international response, highlighting the key questions that decision makers would be grappling with at each stage.
I'm all ears. What kind of questions are we talking about here?
Things like, how widespread and severe is the outbreak?
Okay.
Does the Iraqi health system actually have the resources
Right.
to contain this effectively?
Mm-hmm.
What are the humanitarian implications?
Is there a risk of the disease spreading to neighboring countries or even to the U.S.?
Mm-hmm.
And based on those assessments, they discuss what actions
Right.
the U.S. government might take.
So it's not just theory.
No.
It's about simulating how these decisions might play out in the real world.
Yeah, real stakes.
With real stakes.
Absolutely.
What other scenarios do they run through?
Well, they also have an exercise that focuses on MERS cases in Jordan.
Okay, so MERS, that's a type of coronavirus, right?
It is.
And wasn't that one like particularly deadly?
It does. It does have a higher fatality rate
Yeah.
than some other coronaviruses, but thankfully it
Right.
doesn't spread as easily between people.
So it's a different kind of challenge
Different challenge.
than like a highly contagious virus like measles or something.
Exactly.
So how does the playbook kind of handle that scenario?
It still goes through that same risk assessment process, carefully considering the number of cases, the transmission rate,
Okay.
the potential for it to spread beyond Jordan.
Right.
But the exercise really emphasizes that, continuous surveillance and monitoring, even if that initial assessment suggests
Okay.
that a full-blown international response
Right.
isn't necessarily needed right away.
It's kind of like a wait and see approach,
Kind of, yeah.
but with a very watchful.
Watchful eye, yeah.
Right. Always prepared to adapt
At least ready.
if the situation changes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And they also include a series of exercises that focus on Ebola outbreaks in West Africa.
Right.
Those scenarios are particularly interesting because they demonstrate how the response might escalate as the situation worsens and the risk to the U.S. increases.
I remember those Ebola outbreaks.
Yeah.
I mean, they were incredibly frightening,
They were.
both for the people, obviously directly affected,
Absolutely.
but for the global community
The whole world was watching.
as a whole.
Yeah, those outbreaks were a real test of the global health security system.
Right.
And these exercises in the playbook show how it can be a valuable tool for guiding decision-making, even in those, really high-pressure, rapidly evolving situations.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder that pandemics are a real threat.
They are.
And we need to be prepared to respond effectively.
You got it.
I think these sample exercises, they do a great job of
bringing the playbook to life.
Bringing the playbook to life, showing how it might actually be used.
Yeah, in a real-world context.
In a real-world context.
They add that level of concreteness and practicality that can be really helpful in understanding the complexities of pandemic preparedness and response.
This deep dive has been truly eye-opening.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've gone from the big picture goals of the playbook all the way down to these really specific scenarios and the potential decisions that might need to be made. So you've really gotten a unique glimpse.
A little peek.
Behind the curtain, so to speak.
Behind the curtain.
At how the U.S. government is thinking about and planning for pandemic threats.
It's a complex challenge, but this playbook shows a clear commitment to being prepared, to acting swiftly and decisively to protect public health and national security.
It's about thinking ahead.
Thinking ahead.
Anticipating those what if scenarios.
You got it.
Right, and it's a lot to take in.
It is.
But it's definitely information.
Absolutely worth having.
It is.
And if you want to, dive even deeper into the playbook, explore all of its details.
Yeah.
We've included a link,
We have
the full document.
It's in the show notes.
In the show notes.
Check it out.
So
Good read.
Yeah, check it out.
It's fascinating.
All right, well, thanks for joining us
Thanks for having me.
on this deep dive.
It's been fun.
We'll catch you next time.